What is culture? Culture can be defined as the shared experiences of people, including their languages, values, customs, beliefs, and more. It also includes worldviews, ways of knowing, and ways of communicating. Culturally significant factors encompass, but are not limited to race, ethnicity, religion, social class, language, disability, sexual orientation, age, and gender. Culture is dynamic, fluid, and reciprocal. Elements of culture are passed down from generation to generation, but culture also changes from one generation to the next. Culture not only influences members of groups, it also delineates boundaries and influences patterns of interaction among them. Evaluators frequently work across these boundaries. Evaluation reflects culture. Evaluations cannot be culture free. Culture shapes the way in which evaluation questions are conceptualized, which in turn influence what data are collected, how data will be collected, analyzed, and how data are interpreted. What is cultural competence? Cultural competence is not a state at which one arrives. Rather, it is a process of learning, unlearning, and relearning. It is a sensibility cultivated throughout a lifetime. Cultural competence is defined in relation to a specific context or location, such as geography, nationality, and history. The culturally competent evaluator or evaluation team must have specific knowledge of the people and place in which the evaluation is being conducted, including local history, values, and ways of knowing.
The importance of cultural competence can be viewed from the perspectives of ethics, validity, and theory. Cultural competence is an ethical issue that represents the effort of the evaluation team to produce work that is valid, honest, respectful to stakeholders, and considerate to the general public welfare. Effective and ethical use of evaluation requires inclusiveness, learning across cultural boundaries, and respecting different worldviews. Ethical practices related to cultural competence also involve using approaches that are appropriate to the context, incorporating ways to make findings accessible to all stakeholders, and considering unintended consequences when reporting findings. Validity marks the extent to which an evaluation got it right, regardless of approach or paradigm. Valid guesses require a shared understanding with and across cultural context, and since cultural competence fosters trustworthy understanding, it is necessary in order to evaluate with validity. This is achieved when evaluators accurately reflect the life experiences and perspectives of participants in their evaluations, establish relationships that support trustworthy communication, draw up culturally relevant theory in their design of the evaluation, and consider the consequences in the overall assessment of their work. Evaluation is rooted in theories. Theories come from academic research, practice experience, and community conversations, and they shape our understanding of culture and are themselves shaped by cultural values and perspectives. Culturally competent use of theory requires thoughtful consideration of alternative theoretical perspectives, fitting theory to the cultural context of evaluation practice, balanced consideration of both strengths and limitations of cultural practices, and embracing complex explanations attentive to how power works within systems.
Acknowledge the complexity of cultural identity. Cultural groupings are not static. People belong to multiple cultural groups. Navigating these groups typically requires reconciling multiple and sometimes clashing norms. For example, individuals must negotiate both the values and norms of their racial or ethnic group regarding sexual orientation and their racial or ethnic identities within the cultural values and norms of sexual orientation or gender identity. This is why simplistic categorization can lead to inaccurate representations of true diversity. Recognize the dynamics of power. Culture is not neutral. Cultural groupings are ascribed differential status and power, with some holding privilege that they may not be aware of, and some being relegated to the status of other. For example, language, dialect, and accent can be used to determine the status, privilege, and access to resources of groups. Cultural privilege can create and perpetuate inequities in power and foster disparate treatment in resource distribution and access. Because of this, culturally competent evaluators will be aware of marginalization and will use their power to promote equality and self-determination. Recognize and eliminate bias in language. Language is powerful. It can be used to challenge stereotypes and promote participation. Therefore, thoughtful and deliberate use of language can reduce bias when conducting culturally competent evaluations. In conclusion, evaluators have the power to make a difference through cultural competence, which offers both opportunities and challenges. It presents evaluators with new horizons for learning, opportunities for renewal, and the potential to deepen understanding of one's own work in all contexts. It also challenges evaluators to deepen their self-awareness and sensitivity in terms of their own cultures and those of others.